237 individuals that joined us last week. You heard from Dr. Felicia Goldstein about brain fog and COVID, and then you heard from Dr. Whitney Wharton about equality and caregiving. So I hope you had a chance to go to the YouTube channel. I see about 30 of you have already gone and viewed the video, or you've shared it with someone. So thank you for joining us. I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping, and then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Stites. Then you're going to be able to hear from Dr. Wingo shortly. All right, so we're doing things a little different today. You know, we always kick off our time here with John doing about 10 minutes of exercise, but because we have so much to cover today, he's going to join us at the end of the program. All right, Ms. Sue says the audio is scratchy. I apologize. That could be my internet connection. But really quickly, I'm going to give you a few minutes to go grab a pen and pencil. As you know, the session is being recorded, so you can take lots of notes. You can always come back and view the video. But with that said, you can use also the chat function or the Q&A function if you want to drop comments or remarks or questions as our presenters are going throughout the session today. All right, so I'm going to make Dr. Stites a co-host. She's joining us from the Penn Memory Center, so we're so happy to have her, and we're so excited to have each of you. We already have 100 of you already joining us, and if you joined just now, know that we are going to have John come on. But remember, I mentioned we have a lot of content to cover, so we're going to have him join us at the end. And welcome, Dr. Parker. I just introduced Dr. Stites. And then, no, Ms. Pam, we're not able to see you. Your video is not on. You just see our panelists, okay? There are some times when we do allow viewers to join and turn their cameras on, and we try to announce that the day before or the week before it. But we do have those opportunities coming up, especially with spring break coming along. So be on the lookout for those opportunities because we want to see your smiling faces. Welcome, Dr. Parker.
Hey, I don't know. There's a frog in the mix-up somewhere. I don't know where he or she is coming from, but she's loud. We have a really exciting program for you today. We've got two fantastic presenters. We have Dr. Shana Stites, who's going to talk to you about ApoE4, that's the gene that's associated with Alzheimer's, and how it figures into research. And the other speaker today will be Dr. Aliza Wingo, who's going to talk about mood and purpose and Alzheimer's disease. Dr. Stites, did I say it right?
You did. Thank you, Dr. Parker.
Okay.
It is a pleasure to be here this afternoon. If you give me just one moment, I'll get my slides up. All right. So my name is Shana Stites. I'm a clinical psychologist in the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Pennsylvania and an investigator and clinician at the Penn Memory Center. My talk today is on ApoE risk for Alzheimer's and well-being. Just warming up with the slides. I have no disclosures. What I'm hoping people take away from this talk today is a definition of dementia, the ability to describe the roles of the ApoE gene in dementia, and list some examples of how to support well-being in the context of an elevated risk for dementia. And so let me start basic. I assume many of you, I'm telling you things you already know, but there are 6 cognitive domains. They're listed atop the top of this slide. In dementia, dementia is a chronic and progressive condition that's marked by more than one impairment in these domains of cognition. In contrast, mild cognitive impairment is an impairment in one of these domains of cognition. It is also sometimes thought of as a pre-dementia state that will progress then to dementia. And when we think about the causes of dementia, they are wide-ranging. The focus of my talk today is on Alzheimer's disease, which accounts for about 60 to 80% of all cases of dementia. Though again, there are many other different types. For ApoE, a person has 2 alleles of this gene. And the gene comes in 3 variants, E2, E3, and E4. So it's the combination of these alleles that conveys a varying risk. And it's varying risk for two different things, one of which can be the onset or development of clinical symptoms of dementia, or it can be for a serious side effect that occurs secondary to some of the amyloid modifying therapies. Again, my focus of my talk today is on the first one here, which is the risk of developing clinical symptoms of dementia. So again, each person has two alleles, and it's the combination of these, the variance on these alleles that conveys a risk for developing clinical symptoms of MCI or dementia due to AD, Alzheimer's disease. So if an individual has an E4 and an E4 genotype, their lifetime risk of developing dementia is 30 to 55%. Whereas if an individual has an E3, E4 genotype, it's 20 to 25%. And an E3 type conveys a 10 to 15% lifetime risk of developing dementia symptoms. Older adults can undergo genetic testing in order to, and then learn the result of that genetic testing. There are currently 3 ways that an individual can learn their APOE genotype. That is, it happens sometimes needing information about the APOE genotype happens in cardiology and can happen as part of that routine testing. For some clinical trials, secondary AD prevention trials, it's necessary to undergo testing and learn the result of your APOE status. And then there's also more broadly direct-to-consumer services that offer APOE testing and return of results. The APOE gene stands in contrast to other Alzheimer's genes. And it's important to note that some of the other genes that have been identified are for early onset familial AD. And they are fully penetrant, and they can include the AP gene, the presenilin-1 and presenilin-2 gene. In contrast, the APOE gene is not deterministic, meaning there is no combination of APOE alleles that are necessary or sufficient to cause late onset dementia due to AD. It may change our risk profile, but it again is not fully penetrant or deterministic. The current thinking about the APOE E4 homozygote condition is that it modifies the accumulation of beta amyloid, which is one of currently, again, in the state of science, one of the earliest biomarkers that we know for dementia due to AD. Now let's switch gears here to talk about the psychosocial implications of what it means to know one's APOE status. Awareness of a biologic risk for AD changes a person. It changes how they feel about themselves and about their lives. It impacts quality of life in a few very distinct ways. It can impact cognition and mood, social relationships, one's employment status, their status for long-term care insurance, and expectations or plan making for the future. I'm going to show you data from a few of the studies I've done, and then one from colleagues of mine. So let's first think about the awareness of a diagnosis. I conducted a study about 250 individuals. Some were cognitively unimpaired, and others had Alzheimer's disease or MCI. Of those individuals with a clinical diagnosis, some of them knew their diagnosis and others didn't. And so when we compare those 3 groups, cognitively unimpaired, aware of their diagnosis of AD or MCI, or unaware of their diagnosis of AD, we find some very interesting, we get some very interesting insights into what it means to be aware of one's diagnosis. Now, these were, to be totally clear here, individuals who, in terms of the clinical group, who all were of the same pathology and severity. Okay. So amongst those individuals who knew their diagnosis, they reported more depressive symptoms, more anxiety symptoms, and more self-perceived stress. They also reported lower quality of life. The group who was unaware of their diagnosis, but again, similar in severity, they reported depression, anxiety, stress, and functioning in daily life that was consistent with those individuals who were cognitively unimpaired, that were cognitively typical, with the exception of physical functioning, where they actually outperformed their clinical peer group, and those who were cognitively unimpaired. And we can take this insight over to APOE. Lineweaver and colleagues conducted a study with individuals with E4 allele status and randomized them to either learn or not know their APOE status. Those individuals who knew their status reported more memory problems and performed worse on cognitive testing than those similar individuals who didn't know their status. Now, as part of it, it's how we feel about ourselves when we know this information about AD risk, but another part of it is how we might be treated by others. And this research here, this data here comes from a study of public stigma, where we asked individuals to endorse what they expected of an individual who has Alzheimer's disease. And what we see is among the top 5, vast majority of the sample expected individuals to not be able to recall most recent events, and then to encounter employment discrimination and exclusion in medical decision-making. When we look at subgroups within this, this data, we find that there's actually modifiers. If individuals believe that Alzheimer's dementia, for example, was a mental illness, they were much more likely to endorse memory problems, to worry about employment discrimination, exclusion from medical decision-making, and so on, right across these top 5 most frequently endorsed issues. We also see that there was variation based on age, where individuals who were over 50 also were more likely to endorse high scores on these items, and individuals who identified as white versus those who identified as Black were more likely to endorse high score. I will caution that the sample who identified as Black or African American is very small here, so cautionary on the interpretation. And so what does that mean in terms of take-home points? Well, in general, I can say that APOE status gives us one piece of information about a risk profile for Alzheimer's disease. And more keenly, the data we have about what it means to know one's risk of APOE, conveyed by APOE as well as other biomarkers, is to say that there need to be, that it can affect our well-being, our cognition, our function, our social relationships. And so things that we can do to help support well-being include confronting automatic thoughts and challenging negative beliefs and stereotypes that we hold about Alzheimer's disease and people with Alzheimer's disease. To, in general, be kind and compassionate to oneself and to others in the face, in particular, of knowing this information, but in general, a positive outlook and a positive, healthy outlook goes a long way. And as presented by other individuals, you really can't go wrong with a healthy lifestyle. And so the same things apply in the context of knowing one's risk for Alzheimer's disease as in many other areas of life. Live a healthy lifestyle, get physical exercise, maintain good sleep hygiene, a healthy diet, and surround yourself with supportive social relationships. And on that note, I will pause to move into take any questions and do my best to answer them.
I have a question, Dr. Stites. Would you mind telling them how much we know about how these genes influence our risk for Alzheimer's? People are always asking, what's the genetic risk? What's my genetic risk? And just because you have these genes doesn't mean you're going to get the disease.
That's right. And you know what, I can back it up here and speak to your question, underscore that while we even look at the slide, right? So we know some things. We know a little bit. We know that APOE, the APOE gene, certain configurations, conveys an increased or an elevated risk of developing symptoms of dementia. The strongest connection we can make is within E4 homozygotes, where both alleles are consisting of this E4 status, and that's a 30% to 55% increase in lifetime risk. Now, there's some big caveats. Does this apply? Do we know this about all groups of people and all situations? No, these are general findings from research samples. We also don't know how this risk conveyed by APOE intersects with other types of other factors that convey risk. Currently, to date, the biggest known risk factor for Alzheimer's disease is age, right? And so to what degree might APOE add to the risk that's conveyed by age? These things are still undergoing, right? A family history, to what degree does that add or modify the risk conveyed by APOE? These are all very much open questions. There's, again, some hunches in the science about how APOE works as well, but and in what populations, how it works. But those data, I would say, are fairly scant at this point.
Thank you. That's one of the key questions in the chat. And just for the sake of brevity, there are going to be some other questions in the chat. Dr. Stites, if you can address them, I'd appreciate it. But in any event, I think you've explained one of the questions that's in there. This time, we're going to move our program over to Dr. Aliza Wingo, who is one of our psychiatrists here, who is going to be talking about well-being in Alzheimer's.
So keep talking about.
Something's okay. Dr. still has some questions and answers. I think Dr. Wingo's having some difficulty getting in, from what I can tell.
If you bear with me, I'll start to respond to things in the chat.
Thank you. Okay, looks like Dr. Wingo is able to connect in. And again, and this is a good one from Dr. Stein. There are serious ethical issues about revealing a biomarker without being able to do anything about it. Is this being done? That's a really good question, Mr. Stein. I think Dr. Stites will address it. Dr. Wingo?
Yes.
And I've made you a co-host, Dr. Wingo, so you can share your screen and your slides.
Great. Right now? Should I share my
Yes.
screen and slide? Okay, great.
Yes, go right ahead.
Here, let's start. This is my screen.
Perfect.
Should I leave it on or should I close it?
Yes, go right ahead. Dr. Parker's already introduced you, and we are ready
Oh,
for
really?
you to present.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
everyone can see me now? Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. I am delighted to speak with you today about how dementia is shaped by depression or sense of life purpose. I find these connections very interesting, and I hope you do as well. Let me share with you a bit about myself. As a psychiatrist, I see patients at the Atlanta VA. As a researcher, I spent the last 10 plus years studying how genetics contribute to brain conditions such as depression, post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD, psychological resilience, which is ability to cope and adapt in the face of stress or adversity. As I study these, I saw fascinating connections between depression and dementia, between resilience and dementia, and I've been studying these connections ever since. And I'd like to share some of that with you today. In the first part of my talk, I'm going to talk about the connections between depression and dementia. Why should we care about this connection, you may ask? That is because stress to your mental health, like depression or anxiety, can have negative effects on your cognitive health, such as your ability to remember words, remember events, to think, etc. So studies have found that if someone has experienced major depression in the past, they would have about 2 times higher risk for developing dementia later on in life. Depression here, by depression here, I refer to major depression or clinically significant depression. And I just use the term depression for short. So depression can increase the risk for dementia by twofolds. How do we interpret this risk? As you know, age is an important risk factor for dementia. So at age 65, your risk for dementia is about 0.5%, which is a small risk. So 2 times of that risk is 1%. That is still a small risk. But at age 75, your risk for dementia is 12%. I'm sorry, I just realized I did not share my video. Hang on. So I don't know if I'm supposed to share video or not.
Yes,
But I apologize
that's
about
great. We
that.
can see you. Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't share the video the whole time. So at age 75, the risk for dementia is 12%. So 2 times of that risk is 24%. And so, as you can see, having experienced major depression in the past can substantially increase your risk for dementia in your 70s. Now that I've explained to you the connection between depression and dementia, I'd like to take a couple of minutes to briefly describe what depression is and what dementia is. And again, by depression, I mean major depression. So how is depression defined? Depression is defined by having at least 5 of the following symptoms that I'm going to describe to you. But importantly, these symptoms have to be experienced the majority of the time, which means more than half of the day. And they have to be experienced nearly every day for 2 weeks in a row. So if you experience any of these symptoms for a few hours, for a couple of days at a time or so, you don't have major depression, so not to worry. So I'll describe the symptoms. So to be defined as having major depression, you have to have at least 5 of the following symptoms: feeling sad, empty, feeling down, loss of interest in activities that you used to enjoy doing, and almost all activities, having low energy, feeling fatigued, feeling worthless, feeling guilty about things you shouldn't feel guilty about, having sleep pattern change. For some people, they have problems sleeping, problem falling asleep, sleeping for only a few hours and waking up early in the morning, also referred to as early awakening. For some other people, they sleep too much. They sleep all day long. They don't even want to get out of bed. Having change in appetite or weight change. Some people have no appetite. They eat a meal a day, but not wanting to eat at all and have weight loss. Some other people eat a lot. That's their way of coping with stress or feeling down, and they would gain weight. Having problem with focusing on what you're doing, what you're reading, having problem making decision. And when the depression gets severe enough, people have recurrent thoughts of death or suicidal ideation. And the symptoms have to be significant enough to interfere with your functioning at work, at home, your daily functioning. So again, depression is defined as having at least 5 of these symptoms the majority of the time for 2 weeks in a row. How common is depression? It is relatively common. About 17% of the population report experiencing depression at some point in their lifetime. What causes depression? The causes are complex and multifactorial. The causes are contributed by environmental factors as well as genetic factors. A common environmental cause for depression is stress. Stress at work, stress at home, stress with relationship, financial stress, living through a very difficult, stressful circumstance. Inherited genes from your parents also contribute to depression. What is dementia? Dementia refers to a gradual, slow, but progressive impairment of memory and thinking. And when it gets worse, it can affect your ability to function at work, at home, or doing daily activities. The different stages of progression from normal to dementia. The first stage is the preclinical period, when there is very minimal or no cognitive symptoms at all. But during this time, the brain is accumulating the harmful proteins that prime the brain for later development of dementia. This period is called preclinical period, and it can last 10 years or longer. And the typical time window for the preclinical period is in the 50s and 60s. Then there is the mild cognitive impairment period, when the cognitive impairment is not severe enough to impair your functioning. And the next stage is dementia. And within the dementia period, there is mild, moderate, or severe, the level of dementia. The most common cause of dementia is Alzheimer's dementia. 60 to 70% of the cases of dementia are Alzheimer's dementia. So some cognitive symptoms first appear in the mid-60s. And at age 65, the risk for dementia is about 3%. At age 75, the risk for dementia is about 12%. So now that we know the conditions of depression and dementia, what is interesting that I'd like to share with you is that depression and dementia have shared genetic risk. What this means is that some of the genetic variants that contribute to depression also contribute to dementia and vice versa. I saw a hand raised. Should I pause?
Please go
Or
on
should I
with your
go?
presentation.
Okay, great. So thank you. So there is shared genetic basis between depression and dementia. I'm sharing with you this article written by our group of the Emory ADRC investigators here, as you can see. It says this is a report published in the journal Biological Psychiatry very recently, actually this month. And the article is about genetic evidence supporting the notion that depression can have a causal role in dementia. And also there's shared genetic basis between depression and dementia. And since this is such an interesting finding, the journal had a press release on February 17th, which is a few days ago, about this article. Be happy to send you the article if you're interested in it. Within this study, this publication, we also found, did I go too far? Yeah, we found the proteins in the brain that likely contribute to both depression and dementia. These are the proteins that we found. The future direction for this line of research is that we're trying to find the common mechanisms between depression and dementia to help with drug development effort in finding drugs or medications that can treat depression in early or midlife, and at the same time, lower the risk for dementia later in life. So it's a very exciting area of research. And we'll share with you more as we find out more. What are the treatments for depression? Talk therapy. Nowadays, during the pandemic, you can do virtual talk therapy. Medications such as antidepressants are the treatment. The gold standard would be a combination of medication and talk therapy. We're trying to test the hypothesis whether if we treat depression early in life, whether that would reduce your risk for developing dementia later in life. To summarize the important points, depression can increase the risk for dementia by twofolds. And depression and dementia have some shared genetic risk. Now I'm going to shift gear and talk about something more uplifting, about resilience and dementia, about how certain ways of thinking or your life outlook can lower your risk for dementia. What is resilience? This picture signifies resilience because this plant can grow despite a very excessively dry, inhospitable environment. In human, resilience refers to the ability to adapt in the face of stress, adversity, or trauma. Resilience has been linked to lower risk for depression, for post-traumatic stress disorder, for alcohol use, for substance use, and for suicidal ideation. Resilience is multifactorial, multidimensional, multifaceted. Different characteristics contribute to resilience. I'm showing you here some of the characteristics, some example characteristics that contribute to resilience. They are optimism, cognitive flexibility, adaptive coping styles, faith, spirituality, developing close and secure attachment with a primary caregiver as a child, having frequent positive emotions, having a sense of purpose in life. Experts in this area suggest that the three important building blocks of resilience are close and secure attachment, positive emotions, and having a sense of purpose in life. Today, I'm going to focus on these two aspects, positive emotions and life purpose, because they're more relevant to adulthood. What are positive emotions, you may ask? Are they just feeling good? Positive emotions are more than that. They are feelings such as feeling proud, feeling loved, feeling hopeful, grateful, contented, inspired, determined, strong. These positive emotions contribute to optimal health, and they also buffer against the effects of stress. What is purpose in life? That refers to a tendency to set goals for oneself, to derive meaning or purpose from daily life experience. Purpose in life is an important building block of resilience and psychological well-being. Purpose in life has been linked to longevity, to lower risk for heart attack, and lower risk for stroke. Now that I introduce you the concept of psychological resilience or resilience in mental health, I'd like to share the very fascinating connection between resilience in mental health and resilience in cognitive health. So some studies found that people with a high sense of life purpose have 2.4 times lower risk for dementia. So what this means is that in the 70s, when your risk for dementia is about 12%, having a high sense of purpose in life can reduce the risk to about 5 or 6%, which is a substantial risk reduction, which is really amazing to me. Here at Emory, we also study the connection between purpose in life and cognitive decline through the Emory Healthy Aging study. So if you enrolled in the Emory Healthy Aging study or Emory Healthy Brain study, you really have helped us understand the connection between purpose in life and cognitive decline or cognitive resilience. This is a paper that we wrote and it was published in 2020. It shows that people who have a high sense of purpose in life have less cognitive concern in their 50s and 60s. We'll be happy to send you the paper if you're interested in it. So what this means is that in the 50s and 60s, that is the time window of the preclinical period in the progression, if there is any progression from normal cognition to dementia. So you can see the effect of purpose in life as early as in the 50s and 60s. And we're still studying now about the connection between purpose in life and cognitive decline or cognitive performance to see if we can understand more how to protect your cognitive performance as one ages. In summary, life purpose or purpose in life is an important component for both psychological resilience and cognitive resilience. And people with a high sense of life purpose have lower risk for depression and dementia. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have. So I'll stop sharing this slide. Should I?
One question, Dr. Wingo, is what is cognitive flexibility?
Oh, where did you see that?
It's in the Q&A. You may not see it
Oh,
in the chat. It's in the Q&A, but a viewer has the question is, what is cognitive flexibility?
I
Is
see.
that a
So you
term?
probably are referring to one of the characteristics of resilience, cognitive flexibility. Yes, so that refers to two things. One, it's the way it's called the positive explanatory style. What this means is that when you encounter a challenging situation, a stressful situation, cognitive flexibility is the ability to not jump right to blaming yourself or blaming others or thinking that this is a problem that cannot be solved. Cognitive flexibility refers to the ability to see the issue and try to figure it out instead of blaming or thinking of the worst case scenario. The second component of cognitive flexibility is the ability to see something positive out of a difficult situation, see the silver lining of a situation. I hope that answers your question.
And there's several more coming through in the chat.
Yeah, one of the ones in here is Dr. Wingo. In your study, did you notice that people who had depression and were under treatment did better than those who weren't treated, and with respect to their progression toward dementia?
That's a very good question, and that's the question that we would like to study. If I have to guess, I would say yes. I believe that treatment for depression would lower your risk for dementia because it would create less stress on your brain. But that is, if we want to be rigorous, it needs to be studied in a clinical trial or in a study to answer that question. with evidence. So the answer is, the hypothesis is yes, I think that would do that, but we need concrete evidence through a clinical study to answer that question.
So on that note, if we can go back to the slide about depression symptoms and treatment, a lot of people may be experiencing depression, but may not necessarily recognize the symptoms or have relatives who have those symptoms. And if treatment improves it, we want people to get screened for depression and get it treated, because we know that depression is a risk factor that we can modify for dementia risk, right?
Correct.
You can
Yes.
go back to that particular
Sure.
slide, because there's a question about those symptoms of depression.
Let's see, I think I did the share screen. Let's see. Let me go back. Sorry.
Okay, depression symptoms, okay? So to just kind of go through some of these,
Sure.
sleeping, and you're a psychiatrist, you know, what are some of the symptoms that we should really be concerned about, and how should we address them with our doctor? How do we get referred to psychiatry? What are the most alarming symptoms on this page for you?
Good question. I think it's not a matter of having one symptom that's alarming. It's a matter of having several of these symptoms together. And the different levels of depression, some could be minor depression, and there's major depression, there's minor depression. So if you see that several of these symptoms are being experienced by someone you know, then the chances are that person might have depression. And I would talk to your primary care doctor to be referred to see. The primary care doctor will determine whether you need to see a psychiatrist for depression, or your primary care doctor can treat you with medication. How the referral process is a bit complex, and it might be different for the different system, like healthcare system. So I think speaking to your primary care doctor is the way to go, and see whether your primary care doctor would refer you or treat you, or give other suggestions, or say you should see a therapist or something like that.
Okay.
Let's see. For depression, this comes from one of our frequent flyers. Is depression treatment all about medication? I mean, how can we, I guess the question is, what's the best way to treat depression in older adults?
I believe that the treatment should include both therapy and depression and medication. That would be the gold standard for both of the modality. If you can't do therapy, then you can take medication. If you don't want to take medication, depending on the level of severity, you can do talk therapy. But it's not all about medication. Talk therapy really helps as well.
There's another question about retirement and dementia and Alzheimer's. I guess this alludes to the fact that when some people retire, they don't have a purpose. I think retirement, pushing people into retirement kind of means that maybe I don't have a purpose in life anymore beyond my job. Can you address that one?
Sure. So purpose in life has been studied, and it's pretty stable across the lifespan. It's slightly decreased in around the age of retirement. Purpose in life here does not necessarily refer to just work-oriented kind of purpose. This refers to setting goals for yourself. You can set a goal for yourself to learn a new set of skills, learn chess, learn to dance, um, learn to play an instrument. And it also refers to the tendency to derive meaning from daily experience. I agree, it's harder to have purpose when you retire. And when people retire, it takes some adjustment. But I think that you can still increase or enhance your sense of life purpose or meaning by engaging in positive social activities like spending time with your loved ones, spending time with your grandchildren, the kind of activities that can give you positive emotions, or volunteer someplace at some organization to help certain cause, um, or join some support group or a group that you can do activities together. So purpose in life here refers to not just having, it can be setting goals, could be small goals, could be large goals, and derive meaning from daily life experience.
So another question that's in the chat, Dr. Wingo, has to do with does insurance, and since this is a group that averages age 62 to 63, does insurance cover treatment for depression like psychotherapy or ECT? And I know that there are some differences, but those
I
are some
believe in
questions.
general, yeah. In general, my understanding that insurance should cover for treatment of depression because it's considered a medical problem. So I believe so, yes.
I'm trying to see, I hope that answers the question for a lot of you, but if you're ever in any doubt on most of our insurance cards, not so much the Medicare card, but our insurance cards or supplemental cards, there's usually a telephone number on the back of the card that refers you to mental health services. Call that number. If they don't say mental health, they may say behavioral health. Call that number and find out what is covered, and more importantly, find out who the providers are that are covered under your insurance plan, whether it's the supplemental insurance plan or the primary insurance plan. There are people here who are saying very interesting questions in the chat and the Q&A. But if you feel we reviewed the signs and symptoms of depression, and if you feel that there's a family member who has these signs or symptoms, please make an appointment to go to the doctor and discuss these things with that person's provider such that we can get those things managed. One of the things, and I'm looking at a question from Cornell Gadsden to everyone, sounds to me that a person should have a plan for activities before they retire. Better said than not. A lot of people do have a plan, but they find that their plan may not be giving them the kind of return on investment, if you will, in terms of feeling good about all the things that Dr. Wingo has talked about in terms of purpose. And that's something different, but it's worth a thought to really think very hard about how you want to retire and get the things done in your retirement that you want to do, that you feel have purpose to you. Let me see. Okay, any research on the benefits of yoga, Tai Chi, and other such? I think this relates to mood, elevation of mood, and to Dr. Stites' discussion with respect to the genetics of Alzheimer's, ApoE3 and ApoE4. I like to say to people, just because it's in your genes doesn't mean those genes have to be expressed. So exercise, these things. Can either of you comment on these things, please?
Yeah, so I can start first, and Dr. Stein can add to what I say. I have to say. So yes, yoga, meditation, exercise, these are the things that have been shown to help curb, reduce depression. So if you can do these, if you can exercise, if you can do yoga, meditation regularly, I think that that is a great thing that you can do to help with your mental health as well as your physical health.
Dr. Stites?
I would agree with all of that. And I think as Dr. Wingo started by talking about how the risk factors leading to dementia are multifactorial, right? So there's a lot of things that go into a person eventually developing symptoms in their diet, exercise, sleep, hygiene. These are all things that can work in reducing one's risk for the onset of symptoms. One thing that hasn't been touched on yet is alcohol use, right? And encouraging not using alcohol. Most of the dementia that we see out in the world is actually mixed etiology. And so what I've been talking about in terms of genetic risk has been heavily focused on Alzheimer's alone. But most of what actually happens in the world is again, even in looking at the pathology, the result of a combination of factors, which alcohol contributes largely to.
And that's a really good point, because we have previously discussed alcoholism as a type of dementia, creating a type of dementia. Most of this audience has been with us for a while, and we've gone over the different types of dementia. But I think addressing alcoholism and alcohol use as a way to self-soothe for a certain generation, alcohol use has been a comfort mechanism. And
Right.
alcoholism is a disease in and of itself, but it also puts you at risk for developing a dementia. And thank you, Dr. Stites, for bringing up alcoholism, because alcohol is actually a depressant, a mood depressant. So something to consider. Okay, I'm trying to see if there's anything else. And we do have 2 articles, actually 3. Dr. Stites just issued an article, but if you would, I think Crystal has gotten the addresses or the email things in the chat, and we'll certainly send an email out with respect to the different articles that Dr. Wingo mentioned. Dr. Stites, do you have a specific article that you'd like to talk about with respect to the genetics that we can direct our audience to?
There will be one forthcoming, but I don't have one on hand at this moment.
Okay, I know that she's got a publication that's been accepted for print, so that will be out soon, and we'll be able to share that with your doctor. In any event, thank you both, Dr. Stites and Dr. Wingo, for presenting for our audience today. We hit 243. That's a big one for the week. And everybody seems to like the talk. And for our audience, each of these presenters will be back sometime within the next couple of months. Hopefully, Dr. Stites, when she prints her article, will have an article for you to take to your primary care doctor to help get them a little bit better informed about how to address these topics with you. Dr. Wingo will be back to talk again, I think next month. What's your topic next month, Dr. Wingo?
Yeah, I didn't know I would be back next month.
It's next month or the next month. I can't remember. It's one of them. But we look forward to hearing from both of you at some time in the near future. At this time, I'd like to turn our program over to Mr. Matt Doiron, who's going to bring you information about our cognitive empowerment program, which follows our BrainTalk Live. Thank you, Dr. Stites and Dr. Wingo.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So for today, in a few minutes, we're going to be having CEP Community Live. That's a different webinar. It's hosted by us at the Cognitive Empowerment Program, which is a research study here at Emory. Today, we're going to be joined by Maureen Burke. She's one of our occupational therapists. And so yeah, we usually talk about different types of ways of modifying your home or your car or your life and trying to make things a little bit easier and or on the kitchen. That's another topic that we usually like talking. So please come by. It should be a really great talk. Maureen always has great recommendations, and hope to see you guys all there. I'll be posting a link in this chat in a second in order to register for our webinar. So hope to see you all there.
Thanks, Matt. All right, so as Matt mentioned, if you are new, and I see there are several new viewers this week, thank you again for joining us. I hope you took time to participate in the poll. But if you want to join CEP, they're going to start promptly at 3 p.m. That is a separate Zoom link, and it is a Zoom webinar. If you've registered in the past, you are good to go. You can hop off this call and head over there, or you can stick around for a few minutes, and we are going to have John join us. If you can't pick, don't worry. John's going to be back next week, as he is every week. But we wanted to make sure that we were able to get through all of our content today. So we switched things up. We did not start with exercise today, but we are ending the day with exercise. So again, if you want to stick around and join us, you are welcome to stay and participate in exercise with John. If not, please head over to CEP Live and participate and get all that great information from our occupational therapists with the Cognitive Empowerment Program. Thank you for your remarks and all your great comments. Again, we will be back here next Tuesday. Remember, every Tuesday at 2 p.m. until we open up for in-person program, which is coming soon. We're going to be having a hybrid event coming hopefully at the end of April. We're still working on the details, but stay tuned for those details as well. And then we're having a program this Saturday virtually with some partners in Middle Georgia. If you've received your email, the link to register for that program is in the chat. It's going to be this Saturday. I believe it's from 12 till 1:30, right, Crystal? Dr. Parker will be featured, Dr.
Yes.
Struthers, as well as Dr. Law and a few other of our esteemed faculty and colleagues from around the state of Georgia. Okay, so with that said, I think Dr. Parker has answered a lot of your questions as well. We're going to post John really quickly, and again, you don't have to stay on if you want. It's totally up to you. We're going to stick around for a few minutes, but if not, head over to CEP Live, and we will see you back here next Tuesday. And remember, if you're participating in the exercise, do it at your own risk. You know, John takes us up and down, but it gets our heart pumping, and as we say every week, what's good for your heart is good for your brain. So we want you to participate and keep yourselves moving, keep yourselves active, and take all the tools and the strategies that we shared today and implement one or two. You don't have to do everything, just one or two. All right, thank you for joining, and we will see you back here next week. Crystal, take it over.
Hey, I'm John Lewis, and I would like to welcome you all to the Emory Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. Today, you better make sure you have a sturdy chair. Make sure you have your canned goods. If you want to have weights, anything around the house for resistance, we're going to do it today. We're going to go all the way through because I need to get that cardio up because we got to get ready for the summer and spring. So, in 5 seconds, let's get ready to go. 3, 2, and 1. Here we go. Here we go. Let's wake that body up. You know I love waking that body up. Let's go. Go. 5. We're gonna keep it moving and grooving. Here we go.
Searching for greatness in a sea of the dying and shameless. A sea of the aimless. I don't wanna be one of the nameless. I'ma wake up with the mindset that one day I'm gonna make it. And I don't think I'll be fine if I don't break my limitations. Don't try to stop me, I exist to write my own story. I'll make a decision if I want some peace or if I want the glory. Yeah, don't want a life that is complacent or possibly boring. I just want a life that is worth every day exploring.
My whole life I just wanted someone who would notice me. My whole life I just wanted to be somebody to be. Yeah, I just wanna be great. Yeah, I just wanna be great. Yeah, I just wanna be great. Yeah, 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 I just wanna be great. Yeah, I just wanna be great. Yeah, I just wanna be great. Yeah, 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 yeah.
This is a statement to appreciate all that is vacant. It's just for the taking if you make up your mind to take it. I'm never complacent, I would work in a mansion or basement, yeah. There's no replacement for persistence, it's a patience, yeah. In this life, I wanna be soaring, to feel sun inside when it's pouring. And I'll fight till anxiety is foreign. I'm so sick of my mind's extortion.
My whole life I just wanted someone who would notice me. My whole life I just wanted to be somebody to be. Yeah, I just wanna be great. Yeah, I just wanna be great. Yeah, I just wanna be great. Yeah, 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 I just wanna be great. Yeah, I just wanna be great. Yeah, I just wanna be great. Yeah, yeah,
Finish you up. I have to finish up. You ready? Let's go. I'm gonna finish with these abs. It's ab season. Let's get on them right now. We're gonna get that whole core now. There we go. Turn it. We're gonna lose some inches off that waist. Let go. Rest. Here we go. I know we're going a little fast today. You can take a break at any time. Come on. Come on. 5, 4, 3, And if anyone haven't told you they love you, from John Lewis, your fitness guru, I love you. And see you later. Bye.
All right. Well, thank you again, everybody. What a great show today. We will be back next Tuesday. So be sure to share this information with friends, with colleagues, with loved ones. I dropped the registration link. If you want to join us Sunday from 12 to 1:30 p.m. Eastern, you are very much invited to join us. If you enjoyed this program, you're going to really enjoy Saturdays. So thank you, and we look forward to seeing you back here on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Have a great rest of the week. Goodbye.